Before I start this heartbreaking story, I would like to say that thank you, beautiful world, for come to us channel, and we love to hear that. Where are you watching from? Tell us in comment box. Emily Rose had never seen a hotel like this in her life. The marble floors were so polished, she was afraid to step on them. Every corner glittered with gold-trimmed mirrors and chandeliers that looked like they cost more than her entire neighborhood back home in Kentucky. She had grown up in a town where doors creaked, walls whispered with the wind, and everyone knew everyone's name. Here, everything was too bright, too cold, and too grand. Emily's hands trembled as she clutched the delicate wedding invitation. She wore a simple, soft pink dress she had sewn herself with help from the local church ladies. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. And yet, in the hallways of the Grand Regal Hotel, surrounded by designer gowns and perfectly styled guests, her dress made her feel invisible, or worse, like a mistake that didn't belong. She had never traveled far from home, but when her cousin Amanda begged her to attend the wedding, she said yes, even though everything inside her screamed no. "You need to see the world a little, Em," Amanda had said over the phone, and Emily, wanting to be brave just once in her quiet life, agreed. But now she felt like a child lost in a fairy tale castle. The signs were too confusing. Her cousin had texted her that the reception was in the West Wing, but which way was west when everything was glowing and gold? She wandered, turning left down a hallway with velvet carpet and tall white columns. There were soft murmurs coming from behind doors, but none of them said wedding. She checked her invitation again, as if it would suddenly grow arrows to guide her. Her heels, borrowed from her aunt, pinched with every step. Then she saw a door, slightly open, soft music inside. Was this it? With a deep breath, she whispered to herself, "Come on, Emily. You can do this." She gently pushed it open. The room smelled like sandalwood and something warmer, richer. Soft jazz music played in the background. She stepped inside and froze. The man in the room turned around slowly, holding a glass of scotch in one hand. He was shirtless, tall, muscular, and clearly not expecting a guest. He didn't yell, didn't panic. He simply tilted his head and said with a smirk, "Are you lost or just very brave?" Emily's mouth went dry. Her heart thudded so loud she was sure he could hear it. She couldn't look away from him. He had eyes like thunderclouds and a face that belonged on magazine covers. She blinked, then gasped, I'm so sorry. I thought this was the event hall. Oh my God." Her face turned bright red. She backed up, hitting the doorknob behind her in panic. "I didn't mean to. I'm really sorry." He laughed. A deep, soft laugh that somehow didn't feel cruel. "It's okay," he said, placing the glass down on a table beside him. His voice was low and calm, like a warm fire on a cold night. "People walk into my life unexpectedly all the time, but none quite like this. I, I need to go," she stammered. She turned and nearly tripped on her own feet before hurrying out and pulling the door shut behind her. Back in the hallway, Emily leaned against the wall, her breath shallow. What had just happened? She had never seen a man like that in person. And never, ever had she felt so exposed, so humiliated, and so deeply alive. She found the wedding reception eventually, though her mind wasn't at all on the music or speeches. She tried to blend into the background, sipping her sparkling water, eyes lowered, face still flushed. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that inside that room, the man hadn't gone back to his drink. Instead, Ethan Blackwell was standing at the window, looking out over the city, still thinking about her. The way she looked like she didn't belong, but somehow did. The way her voice trembled with innocence. The way she didn't ask for anything, didn't flirt, didn't try to impress. She wasn't like anyone he'd ever met. Ethan, one of the wealthiest and most desired bachelors in the country, had grown numb to beauty. It was everywhere, but none of it was real. Fake laughs, painted faces, eyes that sparkled for money, not meaning. But that girl, she had opened the wrong door. And just like that, something inside him stirred. A part of him he thought was long dead. He wanted to know her name. He wanted to see her again. He didn't know her story. He didn't know where she came from. But he knew, deep in his chest, that something had begun in that wrong room. And that it was absolutely, undeniably right. Ethan Blackwell had met hundreds, no, thousands of women. They filled his parties, smiled for his cameras, sipped champagne in his penthouses. They wore gowns that shimmered like stars and heels sharp enough to cut glass. They laughed too loudly, leaned in too closely, and always wanted something. A deal, a dinner, a diamond. But none of them ever trembled when they met him. None of them blushed like that girl. None of them looked like they wanted to run, not for the thrill, but out of pure, honest nerves. That girl in the soft pink dress had eyes that darted like a frightened deer's, and a heart you could practically hear beating across the room. There was no seduction, no act, no plan. She was awkward, timid, real. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about her. He told himself to focus on the event. It was a family's wedding, not one of his charity galas. But even as the music played and people danced, he scanned the crowd, searching. And then he saw her. She was sitting alone at the far corner of the ballroom. Her plate was half full, untouched. She had her hands in her lap, her shoulders slightly hunched like she was trying to disappear. Every few seconds, she glanced toward the exit, as if measuring the distance for a possible escape. She didn't look at the dance floor, or the fancy guests, or even the cake that people were raving about. She just stared down, at nothing, as if she believed she wasn't supposed to be there. Ethan couldn't help it. He walked over slowly, as if approaching a wild bird that might fly away if he moved too fast. He didn't speak right away. He just stood beside her table, waiting for her to notice him. She didn't. So he leaned slightly closer and said with a teasing tone, "Still scared of hotel rooms?" Her head jerked up, her wide eyes locking on his. "Oh," she gasped, color flooding her cheeks again. You're the man." From the room, she covered her mouth. "I am so sorry. That was a mistake. I didn't mean to." He held up a hand gently, smiling. "No need to apologize, really." She blinked, confused. "You're forgiven," he said, pulling out the chair beside her. "But only if you let me sit with you." Emily stared at him like he had just offered her the moon. Why? Why would you want to sit here? With me?" He tilted his head. "Because I can tell you're the most interesting person in this entire room. And I'm very bored of interesting-looking people who aren't actually interesting." She laughed softly, more out of nerves than amusement. "I'm not interesting," she whispered. "Let me be the judge of that," Ethan replied, settling into the chair beside her. And just like that, the world around them faded. The music softened. The laughter of other guests became background noise. Ethan leaned in, elbows on the table, eyes focused entirely on her. He asked her about herself, and, shyly, she told him that she worked part-time at a library, that she loved classic novels and took long walks with a stray cat that followed her around town, that she sometimes wrote poetry but never showed anyone. And then, almost too quietly to hear, she added, "I've never even been kissed." Ethan's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't laugh. "Why?" he asked gently. She shrugged. "I guess no one ever saw me like that." He was silent for a moment. Then he said, "They must have been blind." Emily looked down, blushing again, her fingers twisting together nervously. No man had ever spoken to her like this. Not even close. She felt exposed, but not in a bad way. Like he wasn't looking at her dress or her face, but into her, into the quiet corners of her soul that no one else had ever noticed. "What about you?" she asked hesitantly. "You must be used to attention. You know, women and all." He chuckled. "Used to it? Yes. Tired of it? Definitely." He leaned back, sipping his water, then added, "The truth is, I've been surrounded by fake people for so long, I forgot what real felt like. Until tonight." Her eyes flickered up to meet his. "You mean me?" He nodded. "I do." Her breath caught in her throat. He continued, voice softer now. "You didn't smile to impress. You didn't ask for a favor. You walked into my life by accident, and it's the best surprise I've had in years." Emily felt something shift in her chest, something warm and scary and alive. For the next hour they talked. About books, about life, about loneliness. She told him how she felt invisible most days. He told her how being famous sometimes made him feel even lonelier than when he had nothing. And somewhere between the laughter and the shared silences, something began to bloom. But all nights must end. The bride called for a group photo. Guests began to gather. Ethan looked at her and said, "Will you be here tomorrow?" Emily hesitated. "I don't know." He leaned closer, voice serious now. "I hope you are." And with that, he stood and walked away, back into his world of noise and flashing lights. Emily sat there, heart pounding, unsure if what had just happened was real. But she knew one thing. She would never forget the night the billionaire sat beside her and made her feel like the only girl in the world. Word traveled fast, too fast. By morning, whispers had turned into wildfire. The billionaire hotel owner had been seen laughing with a poor girl no one recognized. Not just laughing, talking, sitting beside her, listening to her like she was someone important, like she mattered. It started with the wedding guests. "She's no one woman said, sipping champagne with a perfectly arched brow. "A charity case?" Another guest. "Maybe she works in housekeeping?" They weren't cruel, not directly, but their voices were laced with something worse than hatred, disgust disguised as amusement. They chuckled and raised their brows and nodded toward Ethan with mock sympathy. Some just stared at Emily, like she was an accident no one could look away from. The press caught on like vultures. Paparazzi who had slipped into the event snapped pictures of the moment Ethan leaned in to speak to her. The headlines that followed were venom and ink. Mystery girl snares billionaire. Who is she really? From nothing to Blackwell? Another gold digger fairy tale? Billionaire's beauty. But is she fit for the role? The photos made her look like a deer caught in headlights. The internet, ruthless as ever, pounced. Some called her sweet. Most called her desperate. Emily saw it all. Her cousin showed her the articles over breakfast. "I'm just warning you, Em," Amanda said, pressing her lips together. "Guys like him, they don't stay with girls like us." Emily didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat burned with shame and confusion. "He probably felt sorry for you. Or maybe he was bored. You're not the first girl to get caught up in a dream." Emily nodded, even though her heart screamed in protest. Amanda meant well, didn't she? She was just trying to protect her from falling. But it was too late. Emily hadn't just stumbled into Ethan's room that night. She'd stumbled into something bigger, something terrifying. Her feelings. Later that afternoon, Emily stood alone at the edge of the hotel garden. The staff was already buzzing about how Mr. Blackwell had requested the space be cleared for something private. And then she saw him. Ethan appeared at the garden gate wearing a dark gray jacket over a crisp shirt, but his face wasn't cold. His eyes weren't distant. They softened the moment they found her. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I almost didn't," Emily replied quietly. The sun dipped lower in the sky. Roses bloomed like fire and silk around them. The garden glowed with golden light. Fireflies sparkled like tiny lanterns between the petals and leaves. Ethan took a step closer. "I know what people are saying," he said. "I've seen it. The looks. The headlines." Emily's voice was barely a whisper. "They think I'm using you." He nodded. "And they think I'm playing with you." She looked down. "Aren't you?" His breath caught. He walked to a bench beneath a flowering tree and gestured for her to sit. She hesitated, then followed, the air thick with unspoken doubts. "Emily," he began, "I've been with women who had perfect smiles and expensive perfume. They never asked me who I was inside. They only wanted the billionaire, not the man." She stayed quiet, eyes on her hands. "You did something no one else ever has," he continued. "You saw me without all the noise. You looked at me like I was just a guy who accidentally got rich. Not a trophy." Her heart raced. "I don't want another PR romance. I don't want someone who fits the mold. I want someone who feels real, someone I can sit with and talk to and not feel like I'm playing a part." He turned toward her now, voice lower, warmer. "I want you, Emily, the shy girl who blushes and reads poetry and makes me laugh like I haven't in years." Tears welled up in her eyes. But I'm not from your world, she said. People will talk. They already are. Ethan smiled faintly. Let them talk. But it'll get worse. My family, people in my town, they'll think I don't care what they think. What matters is what you think. He reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek. I want to get to know you. Not the girl they think you are. The one I see. The fireflies danced higher into the twilight sky. You're serious? She whispered. As serious as I've ever been, he said. The world may not want us together, but maybe it's time the world learned something from us. She laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes. What could they learn from me? Ethan leaned in, voice full of truth. That love has no class, no skin color, no dollar sign. And in that moment, in a hotel garden meant for fairy tales, the richest man in the room offered his heart to the girl who never thought she'd be seen. Love wasn't supposed to be this hard, not when it felt this right. But not everyone agreed, especially not the world Ethan Blackwell lived in. The backlash didn't just whisper anymore. It roared. His board of directors called an emergency meeting. They sat in their $1,000 suits around the polished mahogany table, frowning like disappointed fathers. You're making a mistake, one of them said. She's not like us, another added. Small-town girl. No pedigree, no media training. It'll destroy your brand. Investors are asking questions. Ethan sat silently at first, fingers laced tightly, knuckles white. Then he spoke. I'm not a brand, he said calmly. I'm a man, and I love her. They scoffed. One even chuckled under his breath. You think love keeps companies afloat? The CFO asked. This isn't a fairy tale. This is business. Ethan stood up. Then maybe I need to stop building a kingdom on people who don't believe in hearts. And just like that, he walked out. But the storm was only beginning. His ex-fiancée, the one he had broken ties with years ago, saw the headlines and smelled opportunity. She leaked false stories to gossip sites, fabricated tales of betrayal, secret deals, and emotional manipulation. Emily Rose, small-town seductress or strategic schemer? Exclusive, Emily's hidden agenda. Insider tells all. The public didn't need truth. They devoured drama. And Emily, she wasn't built for that world. Her phone buzzed constantly. Cruel comments flooded her social media. Gold-digging trash. Stay in your lane, poor girl. You don't belong in his life, or this city. The words pierced deeper than knives. She stopped going outside. She quit her job at the library, unable to handle the stares, the whispers. One night, her cousin found her curled up on the bathroom floor, sobbing into a towel. Her hands shook as she turned off her phone and stared at the wall, empty-eyed. Later that night, she called Ethan. Her voice was broken. I'm not strong enough for this, she said, barely above a whisper. I thought I could be. But this, the world hates me. Emily, he said softly, don't say that. I'm just a girl from nowhere, she whispered. You deserve someone like you. Rich, confident, unbreakable. Not me. The line went quiet for a moment, and then he hung up. She stared at the screen, stunned. Tears spilled down her cheeks again. Had he given up? But what she didn't know was, Ethan was already in his car. The sky split open above the city. Thunder cracked like the earth was screaming. Rain slammed against his windshield like 1,000 desperate hands. He didn't care. He drove through it all, his hands tight on the wheel, heart beating louder than the storm. He didn't call. He didn't text. He just came. By the time he reached her apartment, his shirt was soaked. His hair clung to his forehead. Lightning lit up the sky behind him as he stood at her doorstep. Rain pouring from his clothes like sorrow made visible. She opened the door with red eyes and a broken breath. He didn't wait. If you leave me now, Ethan said, his voice fierce and trembling, I swear to you, I will never love again, because you're the only real thing I've ever had. She stared at him, speechless. I don't care what the world says, he continued. Let them mock me. Let them pull their deals. Let them call me a fool. He took a shaky step forward. But if I lose you, that's when I lose everything. And just like that, she broke. Her knees gave way as she fell into his arms, sobbing into his soaked chest. I didn't want to run, she choked out. I didn't know how to stay. It hurts, Ethan. All of it hurts. He held her tighter, his arms a fortress. I'm scared, she said through tears. He rested his forehead against hers. So am I, he whispered. But let's be scared together. They stood there for a long time, soaked, shivering, shaken, but not broken. Not anymore. Because in the middle of a storm that could have shattered them both, they chose each other. And that choice? That was the beginning of something stronger than the world's noise. It was the beginning of forever. The world waited. No one blinked. No one breathed. Ethan Blackwell, the billionaire bachelor, the heart of New York's elite, had called a press conference. The media swarmed like bees to honey. Every major outlet sent their finest. Cameras pointed. Lights blazed. Everyone expected a public statement to save his reputation. After all, the gossip was deafening. Board members had threatened to walk. Investors pulled out. His name was no longer just on buildings. It was on scandal sheets. The ballroom was packed. Journalists whispered, pens poised, recorders blinking red. Would he finally deny it? Would he say she meant nothing? Would he do the smart thing and let her go? Then the doors opened. He walked in. Ethan Blackwell. Tailored suit, calm stride. But there was something different in his eyes. Not pride, not shame, conviction. He took the podium, cleared his throat, and faced the sea of flashing lights. Everyone fell silent. I know why you're all here, he began, his voice steady. You're waiting for a defense, a denial, a carefully worded PR statement that tells you everything's fine. He paused. Well, it's not fine. Gas rippled across the room. He leaned forward slightly. It's not fine that a woman can't fall in love without being ripped apart online. It's not fine that people are judged for where they're from, what they look like, or how much money they don't have. The silence deepened. Emily Rose didn't chase me. She didn't try to trap me. She wasn't looking for my money. He smiled faintly. She didn't even know who I was when she walked into my hotel room by mistake. Nervous laughter fluttered through the crowd. But I knew. The moment I saw her, I knew she was different. His hand dipped into his jacket. I chased her. I pursued her. I fell in love with her. And then, he stepped away from the podium, turned to the cameras, dropped to one knee, and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was not a giant diamond, just a simple silver ring with a sapphire, a blue like her eyes when she cried and tried to hide it. And today, he said, his voice soft but clear, I'm asking her, in front of the world. His eyes searched the lens like he could see right into her heart. Emily Rose, will you marry me? The room exploded. Gasps, cheers, cameras flashing like fireworks. The internet went into meltdown. Live stream comments flooded in. Is this real? I'm crying. Marry her, Emily. Love wins. But Emily wasn't there. She was sitting on her small couch in her tiny apartment, wearing pajama pants and holding a cup of cold tea. Her heart stopped. Her breath caught. She stared at the screen, mouth open, tears spilling like summer rain. Was this real? Was this really happening? Her hands trembled. She touched the screen like she could touch him. And then, a knock. She jumped. Another knock. Emily rose slowly, heartbeat pounding so loud it echoed in her ears. She opened the door. And there he was. Rain clung to his coat. His hair was a little messy. His eyes, God, those eyes, were full of hope. Hi, he said. She laughed through her tears. Hi. You saw it? He asked softly. I saw it. His voice cracked just a little. I meant every word. She didn't answer with words. She stepped into his arms and kissed him like the world didn't exist. Then she pulled back, just enough to whisper, yes. And in that single word, two souls found peace. Two broken halves became whole. The noise didn't matter. The rumors faded. The world could scream, but it couldn't touch the love that now stood unshakable. He kissed her forehead, held her hand and said, "Let's write a future they never saw coming." They could have had a palace. They could have flown to Paris or Rome or the most expensive island the world had to offer. But Emily chose a small church, a humble whitewood chapel just outside her hometown in Kentucky. It sat on a quiet hill surrounded by old oaks and birdsong, not paparazzi. It was where her parents were married, where she once lit candles as a child, dreaming of something bigger than pain. And Ethan? He said yes to everything she wanted, even if it meant walking into a town where people stared at him like he didn't belong. Even if it meant hearing whispers like, "He's too rich for this place. She's not good enough for him. They won't last." The morning of their wedding, gray clouds hovered, not just in the sky, but in people's eyes. The press showed up, cameras clicking. Some reporters came hunting for a scandal. Some guests showed up just to see if it was all a stunt. Hate, disguised in polite smiles, sat quietly in the pews. But then, the music started, and Emily walked down the aisle. She didn't wear diamonds. She didn't wear a designer label. Her dress was handmade by the local sewing group, mothers and daughters who once thought, love stories like this weren't meant for girls like them. The lace was stitched with care. The veil was borrowed, and the joy on her face, that couldn't be bought. Ethan waited at the altar, wearing a simple black suit, no tie. His hands trembled as she approached, not from nerves but from awe. She wasn't a princess. She was more. She was real. When the pastor said, "You may speak your vows," Emily took a shaky breath. "I don't have money," she said softly, voice trembling. "I don't come from a powerful family, but I have this heart, and it's been yours since the moment I opened the wrong door." There wasn't a dry eye in the church. Ethan's turn came next. "I've lived in penthouses, walked red carpets, and shaken hands with kings, but I never lived until I met you." He looked around the room, his gaze steady. "Some people said this was a mistake, but love like this, it doesn't happen by mistake. It happens by fate." And when they kissed, not even the cameras could capture what it felt like. It was the kind of kiss that silenced doubt, that washed away prejudice, that made people whisper, "Maybe. Love really can change everything." The wedding made headlines across the nation, but not because of the guests or the dress or the billionaire. It made news because of how real it was, because a poor, shy girl from Kentucky and a powerful man from the top of the world stood side by side and said to society, "We don't care what box you put us in. We made our own." Years passed. Emily never forgot where she came from. She used her new voice, not for fame, but for change. She opened a shelter for girls like her, quiet, overlooked, hurting. She gave them beds, books, a future. Ethan didn't build bigger towers. Instead, he funded schools in neighborhoods the world ignored. "What changed you?" a journalist once asked. He smiled. "A girl who walked into the wrong room and walked straight into my heart." They had a little girl named Grace. She had Emily's quiet smile and Ethan's fierce heart. And when she asked why people sometimes looked at their family funny, Emily knelt beside her and said, "Because we showed them something they didn't expect, that love isn't about color, money, or power. It's about truth, and truth scares people who live in lies." One day at a school her father built, Grace stood in front of a room full of children from all walks of life and said, "My mom says love is the only kind of magic that can make enemies into friends." And maybe, just maybe, that little girl helped heal a few hearts too. Because love doesn't always come dressed in fairy tale robes. Sometimes it walks through the wrong door and finds a forever it never saw coming. In a world divided by race, class, and fear, love can still break every wall. Real love doesn't ask where you come from. It just sees your heart. Love sees no color, only courage, only truth, only the soul.